Asia Tech Podcast. Voice of the Asian tech ecosystem.
Welcome to the next episode of Ashley Talks podcast. Today we're speaking with Philippe Joly, a French actor who broke into China movie scene and made it big. Philippe, fantastic to have you here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Be here.
Fantastic. Philippe, you have quite a story, right? Just very recently, you relocated to Asia. Well, maybe not so recently, but very recently you started working with all those Chinese movies and productions and you made it big. You're playing a big villain in mainland in every second action movie I know. Tell us, how did that happen?
Well, it started as a hobby. It was something, when I came to Hong Kong first a few years ago, I came in the startup world. So I was a tech guy. I'm a geek, basically. And I was in the startup world, and to kind of have this work-life balance, you need hobbies. And my hobby was always movies and writing, screenwriting and acting and so on. And by chance, I got into the film business with little roles and playing an extra here, an extra there. And then one thing led to another. And I'm now about 25 films later.
How many years?
5 years.
5 years.
And that's no longer my hobby. That's basically my full-time career. And now the startup business is my hobby.
And this is a dream coming true, isn't it? Unbelievable. Have you ever thought that you're going to be an actor?
The kids will always want to be superheroes or something. And I've always been interested in the movie business. But I grew up in Europe. And if in Europe you want to be a movie star, it's a dream. It's something that doesn't seem like achievable. Most of the people that I've filmed with in Asia are people that I've watched movies when I was a kid. Jackie Chan, Jean-Claude Van Damme, those people. I had posters of those people on my walls, right? So when I was 12 years old and I had a poster of Jean-Claude Van Damme in my wall, and you would tell me, oh, in 25 years you'll be filming with Jean-Claude Van Damme in China, I would say, yeah, whatever. But in Asia, it's possible. And it's partly possible because I'm white. And I think there is a niche for foreigners in China that is a bit different than for Asian actors. But it's possible. So, yeah, I feel very lucky.
Asia Tech Podcast. Find out more at atp.show.
Apart from being white, as you said, your competitive advantage, what other skills enabled you and what other determination? I mean, there's a lot of white guys out there in mainland China speaking Chinese and trying to, break into whichever industry, but they are not successful. What made you so successful in such a short period of time?
I think one of the reasons is that I come from the startup world. So I have run my own businesses for nearly 15 years. And that means that working 20 hours a day is not something that I'm afraid of. It's something that I got used to. Work ethic, a certain attitude, and also understanding how things work. Because when you run your own business, you're an entrepreneur, you pretty much do a bit of everything. So once you get into the movie business, an average day is 18 hours, an average day. On Ultimate Code, the movie I was shooting in China a few months ago, we did days at 27 hours on set. Nobody sleeps.
And that's more than a day of shooting.
Yeah, so from the moment where you get called, picked up to go to the makeup room and you start to put your makeup on and your costume and so on, to the moment where you finish and you are driven back to the hotel to go to sleep, there was a 27 hours. And that wasn't just one day. That happened many times. So I think coming from a startup business world and from a business world in general gives you a certain work ethic, gives you certain habits, and I think helps bringing something that is a little bit different. Everybody wants to be a movie star, and everybody who's been in one movie thinks they are a movie star, right? So very often what you see is that people are extra in a movie, and then they meet a famous person, and then they have their face on the movie for 1 second, and they think that they're a superstar already. So the attitude they bring onto the next movie is wrong. It's a lot of negative attitude. It's like, do you know who I am kind of thing. And that doesn't work. And that's creating a stigma a little bit on Chinese people hiring foreigners because they go, well, all those foreigners have a bad attitude. Because they sort of have this big head very quickly and so on. But I think when you sort of come from where I came from, you learn that this is not the right way to do business, and I treat that as a business. So for me, you be nice to everybody, be it the tea lady or the superstar, and that comes back somehow. So.
No, that's fantastic. And you mentioned earlier that if you wanted to be a movie star somewhere in Europe, that would be just a dream because it's just so not approachable and so distant and so far and so complicated. And in China, it's much easier. Do you think it's also easier for Chinese people, or is it just for us foreigners living in Asia?
Well, I think being a foreigner has a certain advantage. If you in like in every business, you need to have a unique selling point. So
right.
If you're Asian in Asia, your unique selling point is not very obvious. Kung fu. Half of the people know kung fu. Probably the doorman knows kung fu. So it's much harder for an Asian person in Asia to find a unique selling point. So usually it's based on aesthetics and whatever. But as soon as you're a little bit different, obviously you bring something that doesn't exist in the market. But the market needs to need it, right? And that's not always the case. But in the film business, as a French guy in Paris, I add no value to the movie scene in Paris, right? Unless I'm a great actor and they go, oh, this is the next Robert De Niro or whatever. But I do not really have an obvious uniqueness to get into the business.
Right.
Now, maybe you acquire it over time, but it's not obvious from the start. But in Asia, they go, oh, I like this guy's look. Let's put him into this, and because you look good on camera. That's your first advantage.
Right.
The second advantage is you always need foreigners in the movies because that gives value to the movie. The movie is more international if it's not only one ethnicity.
Right.
So Hong Kong movies are usually gangster movies. They need bad guys. The bad guys are not from here because the good guys are from here. and all of this creates a dynamic where as a foreign actor, being from Europe, you create a sense of a unique selling point in this market. I don't think it's possible in Europe in that short period of time to have made 25 movies and to sort of meet all those people.
Right.
But I think in Asia it's very achievable, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity.
And it's been fantastic that you've actually developed in mainland China, in Hong Kong, in Asia primarily. And I know that you go by another name as well. And it is Lang Seng. It's not Philippe at all, right? And I think that also is very much connected with what your stage persona is. You're basically a bastard. You're basically a villain. Yeah, and all Chinese people hate you. I remember last time we were chatting about it. You were saying that every person hates me in China because I always kill the lead actor. I kill all the big Chinese actors. So can you tell me a bit more from the Lang Sen point of view? How was Lang Sen born?
Yeah, I don't kill them. They kill me, actually. Okay. But I am the bad person and that they want to kill. That's the point. But yeah, no, the name Lang Sen means literally means wolf forest, so wolf of the forest. And it came across because in China, I have a beard and I've had a beard for the past year or so. And in China, every time someone sees me, because I'm a Caucasian, and I have a beard, I reminded them of Hugh Jackman's character in The Wolverine. So everybody was saying, oh, you look like Hugh Jackman, you look like Hugh Jackman, you look like the Wolverine. Even though I don't look like him at all, I take the compliment, but it's not true. But they perceive this because there's very few people with beard, and you're white with a beard, and somehow it sort of creates an association of in the mind. So they associated me with the Wolverine all the time. And on one movie in particular, the producer saw that everybody was calling me Lang Sen. So that stuck, and then he printed it on a poster, like a promo poster. We were doing a ceremony, like an opening ceremony for a movie, put it on a poster next to my name. And the media obviously don't read Philippe Joly, they just read the Chinese name, which is Lang Sen. So they started printing Lang Sen, and then somehow everybody calls me Lang Sen in China now, and that's just a name, and it sticks.
Lang Seng is actually Wolverine, right? It's the name of the character.
No, it just means wolf.
Wolf, right.
Wolf.
Okay,
so it reminds them of Wolverine.
It reminds of Wolverine. Oh my goodness.
I would love to be the Wolverine, but we're not there yet.
You could have gotten in trouble for, copywriting that name. Suddenly Wolverine appears on the poster. Now, fantastic. And I know that 2017 has been a year of huge breakthroughs for you as well. So you worked with a very famous Hong Kong show, OCTB, right, earlier this year, that is right now on Netflix. And you also play the horrible Italian mafia leader in The Sons of the Neon Knight the Chinese movie as well, directed by a Hong Kong director, Juno Mac, right?
Yes.
And the final one, the biggest project so far, was the 3 months of shooting The Ultimate Villain in the Ultimate Code, right? The new movie coming out. So can you tell me, in the past year, 2017, what was your favorite project and how did that unfold?
Okay, so OCTB is a Hong Kong show that started in China on Youku, and it has a lot of Hong Kong stars, Jordan Chan, Danny Chan, and a few others. And I had a very small part there, but I had a recurring character over about 8 or 9 episodes, and I ended up being killed in it and killing people and you know, the usual suspects kind of thing. But I was basically playing one of the bodyguards of one of the villains, and so I was always where the villain was. And that show launched in China first on Youku, and it reached 1.8 billion views. So now, to put that in perspective and understand why China is a great market, now this is not the best show on Youku. This is not the most popular show, and it has 1.8 billion views.
Now, it's crazy.
If you think about the moon landing, right? The moon landing, the viewership was half a billion, so 500 million worldwide. So there's like 4 times the amount of views.
More people saw you on screen than people who watched the moon landing.
If you see a very popular show in the US, very, very successful, be it Friends, the last episode of Friends,
right.
The very last one,
right?
65 million views. 65 million, 1.8 billion. So it puts the Chinese market in perspective, and I think it's great. So, but obviously it's just, this is the Chinese market only. Then the OCTB show got talking to Netflix, and Netflix took it outside of China, and now it's kind of worldwide, available on Netflix everywhere. And it's been trending when it went out. I think it's been there since February, and it's doing very well because it's one of the only shows in Cantonese.
Okay.
The good thing about Netflix is that Narcos is in Spanish, subtitled, and and it opens the door for movies from every country to be there, and there are French movies, Spanish movies, any movies. So this is a Cantonese movie from Hong Kong. They're doing the OCTB season 2 now. I think it's been a great success. No, I'm not in it. I'm dead in the first one, so no sequel for me. And then. So that was not a big role, but that was a very interesting shoot, and that was a very interesting experience because it was a long shoot. There was many episodes over the first season. The other movie that you mentioned, The Sons of the Neon Night, is the second movie of a very popular Hong Kong director, Juno Mac. He directed Rigor Mortis, which was his first movie, and that was extremely successful horror movie. And now this is the second one, and I think it's due to release in 2019.
Right.
It's a very, very big movie. It has a huge amount of stars in it.
Can you name a few?
Takeshi Kitano is there, Tony Long Ka-fai, Lao Xingwan, Louis Koo. So all the big names of Asian cinema are there. And beautiful movie. And I got cast to play an Italian mafioso, but I had to speak Italian the entire movie. So I don't have too many scenes there, but my character speaks only Italian in the movie. So I happen to have lived in Milan for 4 years, so I picked up Italian, and that's one of the languages I speak. So that was very helpful to play the bad guy, but also play it in a different language than it's my fourth language. So it was a very interesting experience, and also playing with huge stars in scenes that you interact with them very closely is obviously a very good thing. And the last one that you mentioned, The Ultimate Code, that's my first huge experience, really. This is a lead role. This is me on the poster kind of thing.
Right.
In a Chinese movie that, is a big movie. They've been shooting for 115 days. Now, 115 days is a huge amount of filming. There's been filming in many locations in the desert.
How long are usually movies shot in mainland China?
Movies could be from 30 to 60 days.
Right.
So this is double nearly. This has gone to the desert, the Gobi Desert in Dunhuang. This has gone to the Phoenix City. This has gone to Hunan. This has gone to Shenzhen, where there are a lot of locations. And this was a very, very interesting experience, obviously, because this is the first time, you're one of the leads, so it's very important to deliver, and you don't know if you actually
Can do this.
can do it, right? It's the next level. So that was very interesting, and I was very happy with how it went. So that was pretty good, and that's probably my favorite. Not just because of the size of the role, but because I spent so much time with the people on this movie, the cast and crew. We spent from start to finish about 6 months on and off, but three good solid months together, and it creates a little bond. It creates a little family. When on the other movies, it's 5 days, 3 days, 1 week, 1 day sometimes, but this is a long period.
So you mentioned, it's fantastic, and you mentioned a couple of big names, right? Who were the co-stars in this latest Ultimate Code?
So in the Ultimate Code, there's no huge famous Chinese actors. There's some Chinese actors that are up and coming, that are not well known yet, but that start to make a little break in the action scene. And there's also the founder of parkour, David Bell. So he plays a role there. So we actually grew up about 50 kilometers from each other in the suburbs of Paris. We should have met 20 years ago, but we met.
But you met in China on
we
set.
Met in China and became very good friends since. So that was a very good experience. So.
Yeah. Talking about Asian stars still. So you mentioned the show before, right? Sons of the Neon Light. And you mentioned all those huge stars, Lau Ching-wan and Louis Koo and Takeshi Kaneshiro, if I can pronounce that right. So these are all big names in Asia. Why do you think so few Asian actors are actually known outside of Asia? In places like Europe, in places like US, apart from Jackie Chan, it seems that nobody's on the owns his spotlight.
I think it depends on the type of movies that they're doing. I think Takeshi Kaneshiro would be known outside of Asia because, first of all, he's a mix. He's half Taiwanese, half Japanese, but he's done a John Woo movie. He's done a Wong Kar-wai movie that was quite popular, and so on. So depending on the kind of movie you're doing, I think the movies export better than others. So Chow Yun-fat, for example, it would be very famous, but he was in Pirates of the Caribbean. So he might be famous for that, but he's done so many more movies than just that. A few foreign actors, a few Chinese actors or Asian actors become famous overseas in the US or in Europe, I think because the film is popular in the US and in Europe. Unfortunately, there's a lot of movies that can't export. There's a lot of movies, probably out of 25 movies, there's probably 23.
Why can't you export Chinese movies currently?
There's a certain type of movies that are very difficult to export, I think, for a few reasons. So in China, you got censorship, so your movies have to be have to please the government. Therefore, there is a limited violence, blood, sex, and so on, which...
That's what foreigners like.
Yeah, but somehow it sort of limits the creativity and the artistic part of a movie. So movies are still made and they still comply with the censorship and so on, but they might not be something that foreigners like. But also the Chinese way of acting or telling a story is very different from our way of telling a story. I'll give you a very good example for this. In the Ultimate Code, I play a CEO of a company that is gone a bit crazy. Now, I am the boss, and I have to talk to my assistants, and I have to shout at my assistants. Now, the way the director in China wanted me to do it is shout at my assistant, because I'm the boss. The perception is the boss is shouting. And I was trying to explain to them that the biggest gangsters are quiet. They don't shout. Like, the strength is not in the shouting. The strength in how you put across a message without shouting. And I think it's a much stronger message if you see, for example, there's a very, very good Japanese actor, Takeshi Kitano, who just by looking at you would kill you. He doesn't need to shout. He doesn't need to say anything. He can can whisper a word and you would be afraid. So that's where we were conflicting. That's where we were disagreeing on how to play a certain type, and I think a lot of the Chinese acting is overacting. If you're happy, you overact happy. If you're sad, you overact, and that is something that is very pleasing inside of the Chinese community, but that's something that is not very easy to export. But that being said, action exports very well because Asia is known for action, and there's a very popular film last year in September, Wolf Warrior 2 with Wu Jing, that basically broke every record outside of China as well, and that showed that it's a movie that is an action movie that has a budget of, if I remember, about 30 million.
30
US dollars.
US dollars.
So 30 million US dollars doesn't give you a huge movie. It's not a small movie, but it's not a massive movie. But I think they passed the 800 million. And I think now that was in September, October. So now it's probably past the $1 billion, the billion US dollars. So that's a small club of movies. But it's a great achievement for a movie made in China.
Yeah.
A Chinese movie about a Chinese story, about a Chinese hero, that actually
And it's global box office.
Yes, so it exported because it was so big. And it did huge in China, but it also did good outside of China. If you look at movies like American movies like Rambo or like Top Gun, it's America is the best and America wins and so on. And that seems to be fine. But China is doing the same thing, but with China is the best and China is great, and somehow it gets criticized for it because but it's the same. It's the same as Rambo.
Yeah,
and
because
Top
we're
Gun.
not used to it, right?
Yeah, so it's not different in terms of what they're trying to say, but so that movie showed that it's possible. There is a movie at the moment called Operation Red Sea that is also doing a huge box office numbers. I think it's 300 million so far or something like that. Also a Chinese movie, and also an action movie. So it seems that there is a trend in the action type of movies
To export.
that export well because people like the way action is shot in Asia, and they compete with John Wick and Bourne Identity and those movies that are very popular overseas. So I think there is a market that can export, but I think not every movie in China can export.
Yeah.
And to go back to your question about the actors that become famous overseas, I think you become famous if you're in the movies that export.
Right.
And if you stay in the movies that are only Chinese, then you become a huge star in China, but nobody's ever heard of you anywhere else.
Right.
And that's just the way it is, I think.
Right. No, that's fantastic. How about some foreign actors? Who are a few famous foreign actors that are loved in mainland China?
I don't know any, actually. I can't name one. I can't name one. I think I know a few actors that have been working in China for a long time, and they're working all the time. But
Who are they?
They speak Chinese, and they are doing every TV show that's out there. But they're not really in the cinema. They're not really in films. They're in TV series and so on. And I think
so. They are extras, basically.
No, they are proper actors with a proper role in Chinese. But I think because one day they play a professor, another day they play a lawyer, another day they play something else. I think they don't create a niche for themselves, and their face is not that recognizable. It's just feeling a certain need for a foreigner to play that role. What I tried to do when I started was to create a niche. I wanted to play the bad guys because I believe that this is what my look feels fits better, and by playing the bad guy only, you create an association in the mind of this guy is great for playing the bad guy. So every time we need a bad guy, we call Philippe, right? And somehow it worked because
we call Lang Seng. Even your name is scary.
Yeah, which is cool. Like now the name is even scary, so that's fine. But like sometimes I got a script and it's a doctor, it's a lawyer, it's whatever, and I'm like, I'm not interested in just being anything for any purpose. I'd like to have a purpose in the movie. Now the movie itself might not be the purpose, might just be a stepping stone to the next movie. Or might be to try something new, or might be whatever, but it needs to have a purpose in the niche that I have created for myself. And I think it's because I created the niche that I am able to actually continue in China in that niche.
Right. About Chinese actors, who are the most popular Chinese actors within China, and have you acted with them? With some of them?
Well, I spent about a month and a half with Jackie Chan. And that was an experience of its own. That was just
Tell us all about it.
So I was doing this. This was a few years ago, actually. This is probably 5 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago. We were doing Dragon Blade, and there's a couple of locations. One is Hengdian in the south of Hangzhou. There's a huge studio there, so we did a little bit of shooting there, and then most of the shooting was in the Gobi Desert in Dunhuang. There were two foreign actors, big foreign actors in this movie. One was John Cusack, and the other one was Adrien Brody. So Adrien Brody won an Oscar for The Pianist, and John Cusack has done a lot of movies. Everybody knows John Cusack. So
right.
So there's Jackie Chan doing a period movie. We're all playing Romans in the desert, and there's John Cusack playing one general and Adrien Brody playing another general. And it's in the desert. We're on horses all day, and we're there with this Jackie Chan, and we're chit-chatting, and I'm on the horse next to John Cusack because I'm his right-hand general in the story.
I'm on the horse.
and in one day, Jackie Chan made me a coffee, and I was very embarrassed because it was like, Jackie Chan makes me a coffee. So
that's a joke.
That was like, okay. And then the same day I was talking to John Cusack, and we were chit-chatting about where we were on the map in the Gobi Desert, and just complete chit-chat. And it was a very surreal experience. And yeah, so that's sometimes when you meet people that you wouldn't think that you would meet.
Yeah.
It just creates this starstruck
kind of feeling,
you don't know what to say.
So has your ego started exploding after or not?
No, actually, I kept it in check. It's a great experience, but at the same time, it's a stepping stone, right? If from one movie you think that's it, but you're not on the poster, you're speaking 3 lines in the thing, you're not, like, we see your face total maybe 2 minutes, whatever. That's not making it, So I approach it from a strategic perspective where I want to break into the movie business in China, and that wasn't breaking into the movie business. That was just stepping into it and having a very cool experience with Jackie Chan and John Cusack along the way. So then you meet other actors, Shing, for example.
Yeah.
I've watched a lot of movies, and I knew I like him as an actor. And he happened to be at a table in a scene that we're doing in where I play the Italian guy. And there's a close-up on me, so I have to speak for a long, long time, repeat the whole scene that we just did. And there's nobody else around. And he was there, and another actor was there, and they offered to actually feed me the lines to help the close-up to be good, so I could react to their look at them and so on. And that was very nice, and it's a great pleasure to watch an actor act so closely, because they're in the same scene as you.
Yeah.
So you're looking at what they're doing, and you kind of go, wow.
That's how it's done. So it's not the end product, it's the process as well.
Yeah, but you're looking at them, and you kind of go, wow, this is great. So, for example, there's an actress in Hong Kong called Carrie. She was in OCTB, and we have guns pointed at her, and we betrayed her. And I'm standing about 2 meters from her, and she needs to take a knife and kill herself.
Yeah.
But before she kills herself, she looks at us, she looks at the guns, she sees that we betrayed her, she starts to cry. Now, I'm standing 2 meters from her, pointing a gun at her. She starts to cry on cue. Then on cut, she stops crying, she has a cigarette, she waits for the next take. On the next take, she jumps into the position, she starts to cry on cue, like action, she cries. And I was just watching this, and I was like, wow, like, how do you do
Shocked,
that? Like, how do you do that, So you're always looking for how to improve and so on, and how to improve your skills.
So you're learning as well.
Yeah, but sometimes you just admire the people that you're playing with, right? They're in front of you doing something that you're going to go, wow, this is great. I'd love to be able to do that, So it's a great learning curve, and I think it's very important to stay focused. Lots of big heads out there, lots of bad attitudes, but staying focused, having a good attitude, having a good work ethic, and basically being nice to everybody.
It pays off. It paid paid off to you big time, right? You were telling me that a lot of directors appreciate your attitude, and actors that's been in the same scene with you are also texting you, Happy New Year messages and thanking you for a fantastic time together, right? So you actually are able to build that network. And movie industry, like many other things in life, they're all about the network, especially in China. They are all about your professional reputation. Guanxi, if you would like to, take it even a step further. Would you agree that that has significant impact of propelling your career further?
I think so, yeah. I think it's very, very important to create a network. It's the people you know, and if they like you, they call you back, and that creates opportunities. So if you do the job and nobody likes you, you do one job, that's it. I have a longer plan, so I'm intending to do more than one job at a time. So if they like you, they keep calling you back. You create a relationship. You might have opportunities for them. They might have opportunities for you, but it just creates a healthy environment. And one of the added values of also being nice to people is that, for example, there's a big problem with coffee in China. Okay, now, I'm French. I love coffee, right? And I love coffee without milk, black coffee, just espresso and so on. I lived in Italy, same thing, espresso and so on. You arrive in China, there's no coffee. And if there is coffee with milk, and it's a difficult thing for a Frenchman to get a black coffee in China. So the person that you need to be very nice with is the tea lady. The tea lady on the film set is the first person that you go and be very nice to. So she makes you coffee all the time, and she finds a way to give you black coffee, and you're always coffeeed up, basically. So yeah, but that's just a small part of it. But really, being nice to everybody. For example, you're nice to the wardrobe people. Your clothes are washed the next day and they're all clean and all good, but you're not nice to the wardrobe people. The next day you wear the same clothes as the day before.
Ooh.
Whatever, like it could be anything. You're nice with the stunt people and make sure you don't hurt yourself. You're not nice with the stunt people, they don't care that much, you hurt yourself. So I think it's just a general thing in life.
Right.
And it's not just in the movie business. I think it's in every aspect of life.
Yeah. And we are today in Hong Kong, and you live in Hong Kong just like myself, and many of our business things and acting things are happening in China, right? How do you see, and why do you think Hong Kong is not relevant in this movie industry, global and Asian movie industry anymore? Back in 1990s, I think Hong Kong was producing close to 200 movies a year. Right now, that number is, I think, below 60. And the only, high-grossing movie a year in China last year was Mermaid, produced by Stephen Chow. So basically local films are really not doing that well. There's much fewer of them. And right now, movie production is happening in mainland, is happening in Japan, is happening in Korea, anywhere and everywhere outside of Hong Kong. What is the problem with our beloved hometown?
It's funny that you mentioned that, because a few days ago I was looking at who was nominated for an award in the Asian Film Awards next weekend in Macau. And there's very, very few Hong Kong films there. Very few.
Yeah,
so,
if any at all.
Koreans, Chinese. I asked myself the exact same question. I think one of the hints on why is that the market in China is so big that everybody wants to target the Chinese market. There is a lot of money in the Chinese market. So by making movies produced in China, made for the Chinese market, somehow they become Chinese movies, but there might be a lot of Hong Kong involvement in them. For example, on Ultimate Code, the guys behind the camera are from Hong Kong. The Sons of the Neon Night is by a Hong Kong director, but we shot in Huizhou in China. And it has a huge amount of Hong Kong stars, but we shot in China. And I think there's maybe a lack of directors in Hong Kong. Maybe the directors in Hong Kong are not as active as they used to be, or maybe there's a transition to a new generation. There was two directors, Sonny Luke and Long Man Long. They did Cold War. That was very, very well received. And then after Cold War, there was a bit of nothing. Then there was Helios. That was received okay. And then there was Cold War 2. And these are of a certain style, and it looks good and so on. But this is 3 or 4 movies in the space of 5 years. Like, it's not really a movie every year. It's not as dynamic as maybe it could have been in the past. That's just my take on it. But also, I think China is such a big market that everybody wants to target China. Even the foreign movies, the Hollywood movies. The Hollywood movies just film one scene in Hong Kong just to be able to create that bridge to go to China because it's shot in Hong Kong. You know, Batman as a shot in the IFC.
Everybody, Ghost in the Shell was shot in Hong Kong. Like, look around. It's every second movie.
And that's, I think, to use Hong Kong as a bridge to go to mainland China. I think Ghost in the Shell. I had a small part in Ghost in the Shell as one of the soldiers there, and it was very interesting. But I think the choice of Hong Kong was also because of the original manga that wasn't describing Hong Kong, but sort of described a place that looks a lot like Hong Kong. So Hong Kong fitted, I think, the movie as well, but it didn't hurt that Hong Kong is a huge bridge to the Chinese market. So yeah, I think it's a difference of focus. Is where the money is and where the audience is. For example, if you look at what I was saying earlier about OCTV, you got 1.8 billion viewers for a TV show, like an online show, something that's online. It's unbelievable for Westerners to even think something of that scale.
That it's possible.
So everybody wants to do the same. Everybody wants to be the next Wolf Warrior 2, $1 billion in the box office in the cinema. Everybody wants to do that. And that's possible in China, and everybody's trying to make it in China.
So how to make it? If you want to sell a movie to Chinese audience, what are the key recipes?
I see a lot more demand for foreigners, for diversity in the movies. I am very welcome in China. I mean, I play the bad guys, and I might not be, but outside of the movie, I feel very welcome. I feel very welcome, and they seem to be happy to have me on board in their movie, if that makes sense. So somehow they go, it's helping me, obviously, to be in a Chinese movie in a big role, but I think it's also helping them to have a foreigner in a big part of their movie, because that opens maybe international doors, or that adds a flavor that doesn't exist maybe, and it's sort of educating the audience to actually the movies with more diverse cast and so on and so on. And I think it's a trend. It's a global trend in general. In the US, it's all about whitewashing and using Asian cast and black cast and any cast of other ethnicities, and there's a tendency to have only white cast for roles. And in Asia, there's a tendency to have only Asian cast and using foreigners just for extra roles and little not important things. But I see a trend of this changing a little bit. A friend of mine, Tomer in Shanghai, was the main villain in a film Sky Hunter with Fan Bingbing. That was a big, also a white guy on a poster playing a villain, but white guy on a poster, right? So same as me in Ultimate Code. I might be playing a villain, but I'm on the lead, one of the leads, right? And I think I see a trend of this happening more and more.
Many people may have that question. So you are in China and you are in those roles. Do you actually speak Chinese? You mentioned that you speak many languages. So is the language something as a must?
Actually, I think it's a disadvantage. I don't speak Chinese.
Right.
And I think because I don't speak Chinese, I get cast in more important roles than if I was speaking Chinese.
Ooh,
so
that's interesting. Why?
I think if I was speaking Chinese, I would be asked to play in every single TV show of bad quality that has no importance in my career. And a lot of people who speak Chinese, I feel, end up doing this. Now, if I was speaking, I mean, I do speak a little bit of Mandarin, but I use it more to communicate with the crew. But I would not be able to play in Chinese.
Yeah.
Even though in the Ultimate Code, I was asked to say a few lines in Chinese because they fitted the story, and it made sense that I said that in Chinese and not in English. But in general, I play in English in all the movies. But I think it's an advantage because it makes you a foreigner. So it's a little bit, you came from Hong Kong to China and you don't speak Chinese. You speak a little bit with the crew, but you're acting in English.
Right.
I think it helps raising a little bit your status in a sense. If you live in China and you speak Chinese you're not.
They think that you are like local, already localized foreigner.
Yeah, I think it definitely helps my status to not be living in China and to not be speaking Chinese.
Okay.
It might be subjective, but I think that's helping somehow establishing yourself in important roles. Now, small roles, extras, whatever, you don't need to speak most of the time, and if you do speak Chinese, great. But a foreigner who speaks Chinese is not unique as much as we can
Anymore.
think. No.
Not anymore, right?
Not
There's too many
anymore.
foreigners going there, and
There's a big Russian community in Guangzhou and Shenzhen,
Right.
and they all speak Chinese.
Right.
And they, it's.
I think there are more than 9,000 people living in Guangzhou, Russian speakers. Yeah, and Russians started going to China back in the 90s and early 2000s, and it's been easily 25 years of history there. So there's indeed a lot of people with very high level. Many of them stayed in China, married in China, and
But that being said, I have also some friends who do speak Chinese, and they get cast in roles because they speak Chinese as well. So I think it's a bit of both. It's a bit of depends on the type of people
and the type of movies as well,
and
right?
the type of movies and the type of career path that they're looking at. But if I was to learn Chinese and I'm planning to learn Chinese, it's not so much to play in Chinese. It's more to be able to understand what is being said and talk with the crew and do the interviews and so on. But there's not so much.
About
my goal is not to act in Chinese, and my goal is not to act just in China either.
Right.
So China is a stepping stone, is a huge market. Everybody wants to break into the biggest market. That's great, but tomorrow there's a
Hollywood
movie.
next, and once you're already famous in China, I mean, believe me, Hollywood will want you. So then Wolverine will not be such a joke anymore.
Maybe.
China right now sponsors so many Hollywood movies. And people are in the West, some of them are worried whether this is, the soft influence that China is extending, and whether China as the investor will be able to alter the scripts and, influence the choice of actors. What can you as industry insider say about that? And what is your view of China going global in terms of the movie and entertainment products?
I think there's a lot of money in China, and there is a lot of Chinese money in Hollywood, and that is very welcome, I think, for making movies.
Even now.
Yes.
Yeah.
But what I see is more and more Chinese actors being cast in Hollywood movies, or actresses mostly, but in James Bond or in Mission Impossible and those kind of big franchises, you have now Asian actors being cast there that didn't speak perfect English at some point, but that learned and that do speak English, and sometimes they're not required to speak good English anyway. But I can see a lot of actresses and some actors being cast in Hollywood movies, and I think that's part of the trade-off. I'm taking your money, I'm going to also push some of your people there. But there are two different industries. I think there's the Chinese market and there's the US market. But when the money goes from China into Hollywood, Hollywood also would like to spend a bit of money to boost movies into Chinese market, right?
Oh, they want their box offices, right?
And that's not always working with all the movies, but usually superhero movies, big stuff like Transformers or whatever, Avengers and so on. These movies usually are successful in China and have good box office results. But there's also a limitation number of movies you can make in China, you can show in China. So foreign movies, I think it's 10 per year. So there's only 10 big foreign Hollywood movies that are allowed to.
Really?
To be in China.
So 10 movies
they're
per
competing.
year?
Yeah, I think it's per year. Yeah, so they're competing with each other, and only the big ones go through. Now, what this does, in my opinion, is that unfortunately the big blockbusters are not the best quality movies in terms of movie and artistic part of the movie, and Avengers and Marvel versus DC and all this stuff is entertaining, but it's not really creative as far as movies are concerned, and somehow it shows an aspect of foreign movies that are not representative of the beauty of
The
so
world.
many subtle movies and more artistic movies that will never be shown in China. So it is a trade-off, I think.
In China, these kind of live streaming platforms and also streaming platforms and short movie platforms are extremely popular, where people could, I mean, I remember, let's say 13 years ago when I was in China, there was this platform which is not alive anymore. It's called Dodo and Pai Pai. So basically I could watch any pirated movie and stream it. And I could access Western and Hollywood movies without any limitations on it, right? And so many Korean TV series were just, just basically readily available. And right now there are hundreds of those platforms, and I'm sure there is primarily access to Asian stock of movies, but at the same time access to some Hollywood stuff. What was interesting for me to understand is that right now more and more Chinese are actually willing to pay subscription fees, and they are willing to pay for licensed DVDs, and they are willing to pay for movie tickets. So it's not about just going online and watching something that's not accessible and trying to save every penny and buying those DVDs for 3 renminbi, but they are willing to pay for licensed quality products. Do you also see the same trend in the past years?
Yes, I think copyright has been always a concern when approaching the Chinese market, and I think piracy is damaging the movie industry. It might not mean as much to the big studios where they've made 300 million instead of 400 million. Okay, big deal, but it definitely does affect smaller independent movies. And piracy is something that is very hard to fight actually when it comes to movies. As soon as a movie is out, there's a copy available before you know it. So, but I think the online platforms and the video on demand kind of platforms like iQIYI, like the Netflix equivalent in China, are very, very popular because they are offering a huge amount of content. So they have a big quantity of content, but also the buying process is made painless because of WeChat, because of Alipay, because of all these payment methods. You click one button and you paid for it. That's so simple and so advanced. Every time I go to China, I'm using WeChat, and I'm just amazed by how advanced and how much ahead of anywhere in Europe or in the US it is in terms of paying for things. But in China, everybody uses it. So because it's now become so easy to pay for things, and I think it's very easy to pay 5 renminbi for anything by clicking a button, and also there is a huge amount of money in China and people are willing to spend it on entertainment. On the cinema side of things, the cinema is a different experience, right? You're not watching on your laptop. You're watching on a big screen. You're watching in 3D. You're watching with some it's an experience. It could be a date night. It could be a night out with friends.
Popcorn.
It brings a little bit of a different experience. And I think because cinema came before the online streaming, cinema has been the leading trend in the West. And in China tends to sort of look at what the West does and replicate what it does. So they also want to have the cinema experience, and I think the price of the ticket is not something that they look at because they can afford it. And they see more the experience of a date night and so on. Yeah. But the online streaming platforms is very interesting, and I think this is the future of
entertainment industry,
of how to watch movies and how to sell movies. And especially the smaller movies. So let's say you have access to 10 movies. 10 movies get into the cinema. What about the other 50 movies?
Right.
Well, if the other 50 movies are available on an online streaming platform for 3 renminbi,
are they now available?
Some are, some are not. I think the Chinese ones are still very
careful
Asian in the content. But on Netflix, you can see some movies that were released, were on DVDs that are now on the Netflix platform. So I think it's creating a trend, and it's opening a door for future collaborations. And also, the online platforms targeting just the Chinese market are not really competing with the online platforms targeting everywhere except the Chinese market. They are complementary to each other. So one movie could be on both platforms to target both markets differently. Some editing might be different because China has more censorship rules. You might have a movie that is a trimmed version that is made for the Chinese audience that would be on the Chinese platform, and you might have a movie with different scenes that are allowed outside of China that would be streamed on another platform.
Right.
And that's definitely a trend. I just finished a movie in January called Twilight Zodiac, which is produced for iQIYI. So iQIYI actually
sponsored it, so it's a little bit like Netflix original, right?
They're producing content, and there's more and more happening where those platforms are producing movies. Netflix produced a big movie with Will Smith called Bright.
Right.
That was a huge success with the audience, but a very that was slammed by the critics. They didn't like it at all, but the audience actually liked it.
I watched it.
So now they're preparing Bright 2.
Yeah.
So, but that movie was $18 million budget. So the money spent on the Netflix original was more than most movies made in Hollywood for cinemas.
Right.
Now that's showing that the trend is on making movies for online platforms, and I think that's the future.
So do you think Hollywood is going to be dead?
No, I think Hollywood needs to adapt. And I think there will be some consolidation on the market. For example, Amazon Prime is not doing as well as Netflix is doing. Hulu is doing some deal with other companies. And I think people are going to start buying other platforms to consolidate that. And there will be 2 or 3 platforms that will lead the market.
Worldwide.
Because right now there is Netflix is just ahead of the game. I think HBO has Game of Thrones, which is great. But we have to wait until 2019 for the next one.
And nobody wants to wait, right?
You know, we're gonna go to Netflix and watch something else, right? So, I think I can see consolidation in the market maybe in the future, but that's definitely the way people want to watch movies, and I think the way China does it, and it makes it so easy to pay for it, makes it just so accessible. That is no longer the need to pirate. There's no longer the need to get a fake one, and also it affects your status.
Yes,
you have the real DVD.
Yes.
As opposed to you have the knockoff that everybody else have. That gives you a bit of value.
Yeah.
So I think it's a status thing as well.
Yeah. Fantastic. I've got 2 more questions. And the first one is, so if there is this person sitting right now listening to us, ready to break into China and become the next Lang Sang and the next, villain, and, take China by the storm, what advice would you give them? The budding actors?
I think get into as many movies as possible. It doesn't matter if you're an extra at a start, just to understand how movies work. Because the biggest thing that you see with beginners in the movie business is that they don't know how it works at all. So because they don't know how it works, they make a lot of mistakes, and they misunderstand the dynamics, and they misjudge the amount of hours required. They misjudge what a take is, why there is 50 takes of the same scene, why are we doing the same scene, because there's different camera angles and different things to understand. So I think is get as many movies as possible to understand how it works. And also I think there is no excuse nowadays to not be making a movie every weekend. Like, you have access to a camera. If you don't, you have a friend of a friend, or someone who knows someone who has a camera, who has a drone, who has whatever. You have free time. You can write a little script. It could be a 2-page script. It could be whatever. You can film on your rooftop. You can film on the beach. It doesn't matter. But by filming and making short movies, even if they're not shown, they're not submitted to festivals or whatever, they're just personal projects, they help understand how a movie is made. They help understand how editing works. They help understand the camera work. What are the issues? The different shots. Watching a lot of movies, like Tarantino was asked once, which film school did you go to? And he said, I didn't go to film school. I just went to films. So basically, just watch movies.
Oh, that's
watch
beautiful.
Movies. Watch the actors that you like. Try to understand why are they good. Why is Robert De Niro or Meryl Streep? Why are they so good? They're so good because they are so natural.
Have you taken acting classes?
I haven't.
That's something I forgot.
Self-trained on this, but I do spend time reading scenes. I do spend time practicing stuff, studying the way people do certain things, watching my favorite actors as well, because there are techniques. There are definitely techniques, but in my opinion, there's nothing that you cannot learn in a book. Okay, you buy a book on the techniques, you learn the techniques. But what makes the techniques work for you or not is practice. It's like everything else. You practice them. And unfortunately, in the movie business, to practice, you need to be cast in the movie. So, the thing that you practice the most is casting. Basically,
but not acting.
Going to casting is your biggest practice. I hate it personally. I just don't like it. I don't like improvising stuff. I don't like the casting process in general. But this is the thing that you do. So,
do you still have to cast?
Of course, yeah. But out of 25 movies where I got cast, I probably went to 150 casting, right? So you go to the casting, you read the things, but sometimes you get sent the scene in advance and you get to prepare it, or sometimes you have to tape yourself and you have to send a tape. So that is a very valuable exercise because you watch yourself, because you're doing the scene in different ways, because you're trying things, because you're alone, you're at home, there's no pressure, and you're just recording yourself on the phone, right? But if you can record yourself on the phone, doing a scene, why can't you make a movie on the phone? Why can't you make a movie with your friends? You know what I mean? So I think it's just make movies, get interested in the whole process, not just in one little thing. Buy books about acting, watch videos. There's plenty of masterclass about acting, about directing, about everything. And then find what you like. Some people are actually like being behind the camera. I like both, actually. I really like being behind the camera. I really like directing movies. I really like producing movies. But I also like being in front of the camera. So the opportunity, obviously, for me is being in front of it as an actor. But right now I'm working on producing a movie, and I've directed a few short films. I've written some films. I'm interested in the whole process as well.